We'll take off here on page 268, starting with the feast. Starting with the feast. There's some amazing things here because, you get into the mark of the beast and saw the destruction that's going to come. And then, of course, we see how when the earth is being cleansed up and what Yahweh is going to do, what he has in store for us to cleanse this earth up. Now it says, starting with the feast, one of the greatest laws of Yahweh ever given to mankind is a law that the preachers of this world hate bitterly. This law teaches how to live together in love and peace. And this law teaches how to share with others. Yet the preachers of this world will tell anyone who will listen to them that this law is done away with, nailed to a cross, a burden to keep and contrary to us, and also is just for the Jews, right? They always say it's just for the Jews. It's not for anybody else. It's part of that old law. Now, in the new world, of course, this law will be taught and enforced upon all people. But, it's not going to be hard to do since Satan's going to be bound up and the preachers of this world are going to be silenced. So you won't have all that negative influence coming at you, and people will be able to see for themselves that these are great laws. And they should have kept them long ago. So all nations are going to start seeing this law as not a burden, but it's one of the greatest blessings that's given to mankind. Now we're talking about the Feast of Yahweh, and of course the Feast of Tabernacles is spoken of here in Zechariah 14, verses 16 through 21. It says, "Then it came to pass that everyone who survives of all the nations which came against Jerusalem." Now remember, this is all those that survive, the 2 billion that will survive through those nuclear wars. Of all nations that would come against Jerusalem, and will also go up from year to year to worship the King, to worship Yahweh of hosts, our Father, by keeping the feast at the house of Yahweh. So notice, year by year, the sacred year is going to continue on. The new moons will be celebrated so people will know when the feasts are. All of these things are the laws of Yahweh that we observe now. And at this time, the world is going to be able to see it and actually be able to partake of it. And it would be that because you see, Satan has to be bound. Now, when Satan is bound, they no longer have that influence upon them. They no longer have the ability to be deceived. So if Satan is locked away and they can't be deceived, then their minds will be opened to this understanding and they'll be taught these things. And remember, that's how we're going to bring peace to this earth, that the nations will learn war no more, because what they will be learning is the peaceful solution on how to live together. So verse 17, "So it will be that if any of the families of the earth," notice, "will not come up to Jerusalem to worship Yahweh of hosts, then upon them there will be no rain. If the family of Egypt will not come up and present themselves, they will also have no water, and they will receive the same plague in which Yahweh of hosts strikes the heathen who will not come up to keep the feast at the house of Yahweh." And of course, this sounds like as if this is a big, like Yahweh is taking revenge on them, but he's not, as we'll see in a moment here. Verse 19 says, "And this will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations who will not go up to keep the feast of Yahweh." So it's almost like it's not a punishment. They're not being punished for their sin, okay? This word punishment means punishment of sin or offender. Basically, it's the curse, okay? It's the curse that comes. And notice it says it will not have rain. Well, if you remember, the curse will come because they won't keep the laws of Yahweh, okay? And if you remember Deuteronomy 32, verse 2, okay, he says, "Let my teachings fall like rain. Let my words descend like dew, and let them fall upon showers like showers on the new grass, like abundant rain on plants." Okay? So the teachings of Yahweh is considered to be as rain. Now, of course, they will have rain, okay, because with rain, you need rain to produce the crops and so forth. None of this is going to stop. If you remember, even Noah was told that summer and winter and all these things would never stop. These seasons would never end Okay, that would never come to an end. It would always be on earth because that's part of earth's environment. Okay, it's the seasons and so forth, and the rain cycle. It's part of Yahweh's law. That's the way He created the world. You know, He created the earth in that manner. So this is going to continue on. But if you notice also this teaching, okay, let my teachings fall like rain. Basically what He's saying, look, if you don't keep these teachings, then you're going to end up suffering a curse. Okay, and so it's not going to take much for these people to see that, hey, they want to do what needs to be done. Okay, so in that day there will also be engraved on the bells of the horses, Kadesh La Yahweh, which means holy to Yahweh, and the pots in Yahweh's house will be like the bowls before the altar. Okay, now these things, remember, they had holy objects that they used when they offered sacrifices. Okay, when they would boil the sacrifices, certain sacrifices were burnt completely. Other sacrifices people would bring in, and the priest would take them and they would boil them in the pots and give them, take their portion, which is use their right shoulder, and then they would give the rest to the people, and they would eat of these things. But if you notice here, it says that, yes, every pot in Jerusalem and Yada will be holy to Yahweh. There will be no more abomination. You won't have to worry about anything being abominable. These things will all be holy to Yahweh, and it will be holy to His people. You will be eating holy, righteous, clean food. And all who sacrifice may come and take of them and boil the meat of the sacrifices in them. And in that day you will no longer will be a Canaanite, a God worshiper, in the house of Yahweh of hosts. Okay, because remember, they did creep into the house. Even the priest had turned, and these are the ones, not the ones that Yeshua went to when he was 12 years old and spoke to, but these were the others who had eventually had taken over the house of Yahweh and corrupted it completely and turned it into a God-worshiping place. And you notice here, he says they boil the meat. Like I said, this was sacrifices in which they would actually take it. Here's an example here of showing you. Of course, it's Eli's sons, but they didn't do too great of a job on what they were supposed to do. Can that zoom in further? Can y'all read it? Okay, well, look at verse 12 here. It says, now the sons of Eli were the sons of Belial, okay, which means they were bad, okay? They were literally sons of Satan, basically, because they didn't keep Yahweh's laws. It says, it was the practice of the priests with the people that when any man offered a sacrifice, and while the meat was boiling, the priest's servants would come with a three-pronged fork in his hand, and then he would thrust it into the skillet, the kettle, or the cauldron, or the pot, and the priest would take for himself whatever the fork brought up. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh. But even before the fat was burned, the servant of the priest would come and say to the man who was sacrificing, give the priest some meat to roast, or he will not take boiled meat from you, but raw. Can y'all see that? You can. And if the man said to him, let the fat be first burned, then take whatever you want, the servant would answer, no, but you must give it to me now, or if not, we'll take it by force. So the sin of the young men was very great in front of Yahweh, for men came to treat Yahweh's offerings with contempt. Okay? So they didn't do what was right in Yahweh's eyes, of course, and they were supposed to wait until certain things was to be done before they were supposed to take anything. And of course it was supposed to be boiled, okay, because that was part of the sacrifice. That was the stipulation of the law. And of course these people treated the sacrifices with contempt, and so therefore this made the people not want to come and do the things that they were supposed to be doing because of the priesthood. And then of course eventually Samuel took over and then straighten things out and so forth. But here it shows you that will never take place again, because every pot in Jerusalem and Yada will be holy to Yahweh of hosts, and those who sacrifice will take of it and boil the meat, and then there will no longer be a God worshiper in the house of Yahweh of hosts. Okay, Yahweh's going to get rid of all of these things. None of this will ever exist again. So there'll be no Christmas, there'll be no Valentine's Day, there'll be no Easter or Halloween or any other pagan celebrations in the New World. Because all of these things are holidays, okay? They're not holy days. See, they even took the word holy and corrupted it to holly, and made it into a holiday. This is man's ways of worshiping the gods, but it's not Yahweh's ways. Yahweh's ways are holy days. And one of the main purposes of this feast is to teach men true love. So all nations at this time are going to come together in one place to observe Yahweh's ordained feasts. And this is what's going to teach them unity and make them realize that there is only one human race. Okay? So when they come together, they'll live together with each other and they'll learn how to love one another for 8 glorious, joyous feasting days out of every year. Okay? So remember, year by year this would take place. Now the next thing is the Sabbath day, because the people also will obey Yahweh by gathering together every Sabbath day. That's the 7th day of the week. Okay, and if you look up in any dictionary, any reliable dictionary will tell you the 7th day of the week is Saturday. Okay, when you look up Saturday, it tells you it's the 7th day of the week. You look up Sunday, it tells you it's the 1st day of the week. Okay, so dictionaries will tell you, and so there's really no excuse for people not to know these things. It's just that they refuse to look it up, because remember, deception is a choice. People choose to be deceived, okay? So Satan's always, of course, hated the 7th day because it's the mark or the sign that we belong to Yahweh. In Yesaiah 20, verses 12 through 20, it says, "Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between me and them." Okay, Yahweh gave us the Sabbath. He gave mankind the Sabbath to be a sign between Yahweh and his people. Notice, that they might know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies them. That's the whole purpose of the Sabbath, is for you to learn of Yahweh and to grow closer to him and to understand who he is. In Genesis 2, 1 through 3. There it is. Takes a little getting used to it. Zoom out. All right. Out or in? Out? Like that? Smaller? All right. Okay, so notice he says, Then when the heavens and the earth and all the hosts of them were finished, then on the 7th day Yahweh ended his work when he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from his work which he had done. And then Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart to be holy, because in it he rested from all his work which Yahweh had created and made. Okay, so he made man, and then right after that, after he made man, he told him about the Sabbath day and gave him the Sabbath day. Okay, so this is a sign, and so this was an immediate sign right here that you see in Genesis, that Yahweh gives to mankind that he belongs to him, that he is his creation. Okay? So that we might know Yahweh, that is Yahweh who sanctifies us. So Adam was taught on that first day of his life there that he belonged to Yahweh. Okay, and it was Yahweh who sanctifies him. And then notice in Yesaiah 20, verse 20 also says, "And hallow, or make holy my Sabbaths." Okay, and the way you make holy the Sabbath is to keep it the way that Yahweh says to keep it. "Hallow and make holy my Sabbaths, and they will be a sign between me and you, so that you may know that I am Yahweh your Father." Notice again, he says the same thing, that we may know that he is Yahweh our Father. In Isaiah 11, it was verse 9. Isaiah 11, verse 9. There. I think it takes you a little used to. Okay. In Isaiah 11, verse 9, he says, "And they will not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be as full as the knowledge of Yahweh, and as the waters that cover the sea." So if you notice, that knowledge is going to go forth throughout the earth. Okay? And they're not going to learn to destroy, but they're going to learn to live in peace. Okay? And so this is how we get to know Yahweh and understand who Yahweh is, because his laws reveal his entire character is all summed up in his laws. So Yahweh tells us here that there won't be left, no one in the world is going to be left whose heart wants to seek after the gods and pollute his Sabbaths, okay? It just won't take place. In Yirmiah 10, was it 10:11? In Yirmiah 10:11, he says, can you see that? Yeah. Okay, in Romans 10:11 he says, and this is what you will say to them, these gods which have not made the heavens and the earth will perish from the earth and from under these heavens. Okay, so there's not going to be any gods, there's not going to be any people seeking after the gods. These things are going to perish. Yahweh is going to wipe these things out. Okay, and this is the reason why Satan's going to be put away for those 1,000 years to go for a time span, so that these people can be taught and resurrected and so forth. Okay, and then after that, she's going to receive her judgment. Okay, I mean her sentence actually, because her judgment already is set. It's death. Okay, she's a servant of sin, but she's going to receive her sentence, which will be that she will be destroyed, and any god that follows her will also be destroyed. And so this will all be wiped out. And this is going to go throughout the entire universe. And this is what our jobs will be, is to go through the universe and bring it back into unity with Yahweh. And of course, Satan hates, just like the preachers hate also, that, they hate the Sabbath because they know, that this is something that draws a person closer. And this is why they hate you when you make mention of the Sabbath and think that you're a Sabbath keeper, because of the fact that it shows who you are. And they know you're from the house of Yahweh. They know that because the way you carry yourself and the way you present yourself and your lifestyle separates you from them. And it's like the prophets have said, they long to call what is righteous evil and call what is evil righteous in their eyes. So the Sabbaths are not the only weekly seventh-day Sabbath, of course, because you have Sabbaths throughout the feast days as well. But in Exodus 13, verse 9, it says, and it shall be as a sign upon your hand and as a memorial between your eyes. Okay, so it's going to be a sign upon your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that Yahweh's law shall be in your mouth, for with a strong hand, notice, Yahweh has brought you out of Egypt. Okay, and of course Egypt symbolizes sin. Yahweh's brought us out of the land of sin, and his Sabbaths are a sign upon our hand. Okay, your hands is what you do your work with, and so therefore, if you do the works of Yahweh, you are showing forth that this is a sign, and it's a memorial between our eyes, a memorial or a remembrance. Okay, it's a remembrance of what Yahweh has done for us. Okay. And if you look up in the Ten Commandments, okay, in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, they deal with coming to deal with the Sabbath day. In one of them, it shows that the Sabbath refers to the memorial of the creation, and in the other one, it shows that the Sabbath refers also to a memorial of coming out of Egypt. Okay. So remember, coming out of Egypt, like it says here in Exodus 13, the Sabbath is a sign that Yahweh has brought us out of Egypt, out of these things. And so Yahweh brought us out with a strong hand. Again, it's the righteous works. It shows the righteous works there of Yahweh. It's not like he's got this big old hand and he grabbed us and scooped us up out of Egypt, right? So we see here that Yahweh works with his people, and he gives us these signs to show that we belong to him. Now, never having kept Yahweh's Sabbath laws, of course, Satan preachers think that they hate it, but why is that? Because, they yield to Satan's influence and rather than obeying Yahweh's laws, and there's no scripture in the Holy Bible that they can go to show that any of Yahweh's laws have ever been done away with. You can't find it. Instead, what you find is that the laws of Yahweh are forever, and that the laws of Yahweh are from the beginning. These are the things that, and because Satan knows that these things are in there, she will not influence her preachers to even touch these things, you know. You will never hear them talking about the laws. And even those who may claim that that you should keep the laws, they pick out certain ones that they want. Only the certain ones that they want. That's how they justify, well, the Sabbath day is forever. You know, it's the seventh day of the week. It's forever. Well, yeah, but that's just one of the 613 laws. So all the other ones also must be kept, you know. But, of course, people today, you know, they blindly follow these preachers, you know, right to the destruction that Yahweh tells them is coming without even blinking an eye, you know. But the weekly Sabbath will be observed and strictly enforced in the New World, along with another ordinance of Yahweh that this world and the Jews, of course, have rejected, and that is that they, you know, what they've done is, since this ordinance has been rejected, in order to follow a calendar, which is 1 to 3 days off, because they go by a calculated calendar. You know, they calculate the calendar, and a real Jew doesn't even know what the new moon is. You know, they go by the calendar. They just go by the set calendar, okay? The house of Yahweh, you know, some people have said, well, Yahweh, you have a calendar. Yes, we do have a calendar. But if you notice, it always says, look this night to see if you observe that moon. You know, it tells you what the law says, to look, to observe. And we always, always, always say that the feast is tentatively scheduled around this time if the new moon is sighted. You'll always find that on the calendar, see? So we're telling you that this is when we can expect it. We're thinking it's going to be around that time, but Yahweh could change it at any time if he wanted, you know. So it's up to him as to whether this takes place or not. So, but the Jews are 1 to 3 days off because of the fact that their calculated calendar, this is why you'll find to where most of the time they'll observe 2 days for some feast, okay? Like they'll observe 2 days to make sure to get the right one, you see? So they'll observe it 2 days in a row. But their schedules are always off. But in Isaiah 66, verse 23, it says, and it will come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come to worship before me, says Yahweh. And you've noticed that, all flesh, okay? That means everybody. Everybody is going to come and worship before Yahweh at this time. And it's going to be from one new moon to another, okay? One Sabbath day to another. Now, this is one of those verses that they'll try and use when they try and say that the new moon, that the Sabbath is set by the new moon, you know. And again, they're so ignorant to see this because the fact that all you have to do is go back to the very beginning where Yahweh shows you in Genesis, the moon wasn't come about until the 4th day of the week. Yahweh had already begun his days of counting of the week to get to the 7th day. You know, and the moon didn't come about till the 4th day of the moon. So, you know, right then and there, they're already screwed up. And you tell people that, and it's just like, duh, they don't even think about that. You know, it just blows their whole theory out of the water. But it's so stupid because of the fact that if they count these days like that, the Sabbath can fall any day of the week. And then by the time the month is over, you still got extra days. So what are you going to do with those 2 extra days, you know? But to this day, I've never had anybody be able to explain that to me because they can't do it, you know. They can't do it because there's extra days that they have nothing to do with, you know. So it doesn't make any sense. Well, he says, I said that these ordained observances will be strictly enforced. And if you notice in Isaiah 66, verse 24, okay, that from one new moon, from one Sabbath, all flesh is going to come to worship before Yahweh. And in verse 24, and they will go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men who have transgressed against me. For their worm will not die, nor their fire be quenched, and there will be abhorrence to all flesh. Now remember, we already read, I think it was last week, right, about how it's going to take 7 moons just to bury the dead in Israel, okay? So these things, these bodies, dead bodies, are going to be all over the place. And as he's talking about here, they will look upon the carcasses of these men who have transgressed against me. That's the only reason why they're dead, is because they transgressed against Yahweh and they got caught up into this beastly system that ended up taking their lives. Okay, and this is why only 2 billion out of all the rest of the world is going to survive, because these 2 billion or some of them, many of them are, right now they're secretly looking and studying and finding these things, but they haven't been openly yet. Otherwise, they'd have come to Yahweh's house. But these others who flat outright refuse it are caught up into the world and are going to die. So it says, they have transgressed against me. Of course, sin, as 1 Yahweh 3 verse 4 says, sin is the transgression of the law. For whoever sins transgresses the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. That's plain fact right there. The thing is that Yahweh just tells you, he gives you the full definition of sin in 1 Yahweh 9, and he gives you the full definition of what righteousness is in Deuteronomy 6:25, right? So without a doubt, you know what sin is, you know what righteousness is. Now this word transgression, according to Thayer's, it means, it's number 458, it's the condition without law, okay? A condition without law. Either because of ignorance, and unknown sins that you don't know about, or because of violating the law. So sin is violating the law. And it also means contempt, iniquity, and wickedness. And of course, wickedness, we know, is following the gods, being like the gods themselves. Okay? Now, transgression of the law, that's number 458. According to Strong's, and it's from 459. And then number 459 is interesting because number 459 is from two words. Number one, which is a negative particle, which it's opposite of positive. It's negative, so it's opposite. And then 35, it comes from 35:51, which means to parcel out food, to hand out food, give food out. And it also, as referring to law, it means law through the idea of prescriptive usage, okay? Prescriptive usage. You think about a prescription, when a doctor writes out a prescription, right? What he does is he writes out, here's what you take, and here's how you take it, right? So that's instructions that he gives on how to take that medicine. Well, that's what prescriptive means. Prescriptive means to give exact rules, directions or instructions on how you should do something, okay? And so according to the law, that's exactly what Yahweh does. He gives us exact rules and exact instructions on what we should and should not do. And that's why he has his prohibitive laws, and that's why he has his positive laws, okay? And of course, this word sin is number 266. It's from 264, which means to miss the mark. Okay, to miss the mark. So when a person continues in the practice of sin, they miss the mark of Yahweh. They miss having the mark of Yahweh, which, remember, the mark of Yahweh, the sabbath, are a sign that we belong to Yahweh. We're marked out to be his. But when a person continues to practice sin, they miss the mark of Yahweh, and they give themselves the mark of the beast. Okay, and of course you find that in Revelation 13:16, where it says, they gave unto themselves the mark of the beast. Okay, they did. They made that choice, okay, to be deceived. They made the choice to sin. So that's what sin is all about. So sin is the transgression of the law. So when we don't follow the rules exactly the way that Yahweh has laid out, then of course we miss that mark and we take upon ourselves the mark of Yahweh, because you are servants to whom you obey, right? Either obedience to righteousness or to sin. So those who refuse to repent of their transgressions will become ashes under the feet of those who learn to love Yahweh's laws. And remember, the scripture tells you that they will be ashes under the soles of our feet, because they will be burnt up in this nuclear fires. And this shows, that prophecy shows that there will be survivors, and that Yahweh will allow those whom he calls out, who love his laws, that they will be protected. You remember that show, Black Rain, White Light, Black Rain, I think it was called. Anyway, it was a documentary about the bombs going, the nuclear bomb explosion, and it showed, talked about the survivor, talked about how she went up to her mother, and there's just the charred body was there, and when she went to touch it, it just disintegrated in her hands, Well, this is the way it's going to be underneath the feet of people as well. So the house of Yahweh observes the laws of Yahweh today, and of course we found that the laws of Yahweh, that they're not a burden, like Satan's preachers proclaim, but they're a great, tremendous joy to keep, and they get more and more so year after year after year. The longer you keep Yahweh's feast, the more and more joyous they are. So, people need to they need to realize this and start coming to Yahweh's feast and keeping the new moons. Okay, the bottom of page 270 here, wealth equally divided. We're now living in a very unfair world as far as material wealth is concerned. In this present era, the wealth of all nations is unequally divided. Now, this is around 10% of the population controls 90% of the wealth, while 10% of the wealth is controlled by 90% of the population. This is more current at this time. See if that will that show up? Can you read that? Okay, it says, I want to have that. It says in the start of 2015, they warned that 1% of the world's population would own more wealth than the other 99% by next year. Mark Goldwyn, Oxfam, Great Britain's chief executive, said that the fact is that this has occurred a year earlier, just weeks after the world leaders agreed that a global goal to reduce inequality shows just how urgently world leaders need to tackle this problem. This is the latest evidence, he says, that extreme inequality is out of control. Are we really joyful to live in a world where the top 1% own half the wealth and the poorest half own just 1%? So, it's gotten much, much worse now, and they realize that people, for the love of money, they love that money and they love that wealth. And, of course, that's what Satan has based her whole kingdom upon, is wealth, going and lusting after things. And this is why wars are broken out, because people won't accept what belongs to another, and they want to take it by force. And so all of these things are based upon the inequality of wealth. So add to this unequal wealth the burden of oppressive taxation, and this also adds up to a very unfair government. So this situation alone has caused literally thousands of civilian and military uprisings throughout the centuries. In fact, there are several revolutions going on in the world today because of this very thing, and others are beginning to start. And remember, this is all part of what Yeshua said, that there will be wars and rumors of wars and so forth, right? Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. So unequally divided wealth would just not be a problem in the new world. True love is going to be taught. Greed and selfishness is not going to be allowed to exist, because Scripture shows that everybody was going to have an equal opportunity and equal wealth. Micaiah 4:4 says, "But every man will sit under his vine and under his fig tree or his olive tree, and none will make them afraid, for the mouth of Yahweh of hosts has spoken it." Notice, no one's going to make them afraid. Okay? They're going to have their own vine, their own fig tree. They're going to have basically they have their own plot of land, okay, that no one is going to desire to take it. And with having your own, you won't have a desire to take what somebody else has. So in this way, they will be loving their neighbor as themselves. They will be taught that, and they will develop it when they see that if they have what they have need of, why do they need to lust and covet after something else that somebody else has? Okay? So Yahweh's law shows that if you have everything laid out and the laws of Yahweh are kept, then there will be no problems. This is why when a man became destitute, okay, and he, if he got into debt and so forth, or stole and so forth, he would have to be sold as a slave to someone, okay? However, by keeping the laws of Yahweh, when someone bought a slave, that slave was treated, whether it was a homeborn person or whether it was a stranger, okay, he was still treated as a family member. He had to be. He had to be treated as a family member. He couldn't be treated any other way, okay? And so this is the reason why at the time, when the time came, you know, when he served him 6 years, he said, okay, now you have the choice. You can either be set free, I'll give you whatever you have need of, you'll be taken care of, you'll have all the clothes you need, the food you need, and the money you need, and so forth, and you can take your possessions and you can leave and you can go start out life on your own or whatever, or you could have your ear oiled and you could belong to that family forever, you know. And so the choice was given to them. So when the law says that, you remember it says that if a slave ran away, you do not take that slave back, okay? Because remember, slaves were marked. They were marked just and then branded sometimes. The heathens did this. Yahweh's people didn't, but the heathens did. But if a slave ran away and you came across one, you were not to bring that person back, because of the fact that you know the reason why he ran is because of God worship. So you wouldn't take someone back and force them back into a household of God worship. Instead, you would protect them and take care of them. So all of these things show the true love for your neighbor as yourself. Now, all of this we know is going to start around with the nation Israel, because prophecies show that the kingdom of Yahweh will be ruled by, of course, the supreme head, who is Yahweh, through the King of Kings and the ruler of rulers, Yeshua, who will be over the kings and priests, which will be the positions that you're vying for now. You're going through the tests and trials to prove yourself worthy of that. That's going to be the saints of Yahweh. And then that will begin with the tiny nation of Israel and then spread from there throughout all the earth. Okay? Now, in the 1,000-year millennial reign of peace, once it begins after the Great Tribulation is over and the 7 last plagues that is prophesied to take place as we read in Revelation, once all that's over, then the people of this planet, beginning with the children of Israel, will then begin to receive the blessings from Yahweh. But mankind has to go through that first. You can't stop that, okay? Mankind has to learn the lesson. And Yahweh knows what he's doing. And this is why Yahweh is not going to stop it until it's time. He's got to let it accomplish what it needs to accomplish. Mankind has to see the horror of what sin brings. You know, to clean up this earth and to take 7 moons just to clean up the nation of Israel because of the disgusting things that will be there, parts and bits and pieces of bodies. You know, when there are explosions, bodies fly into it tears into shrapnel and then just tears a body up and shreds it all over the place, you know. Well, this is what's going to take place, and they're going to be putting up banners and so forth when they find here's a person's arm or part of their leg or whatever, you know. They're going to be putting markers up so they can come and gather all this together and bury it and so forth, you know, to start cleaning up the land. But after all of this is over, you know, then mankind is going to see that they're going to be given a choice. Is that what you really want? Because that's the way that you're following, that's what it's going to bring. And you're going to bring the earth back into that condition. And if that's what you want, go ahead and choose it. But if you prefer what you have seen here and experienced the great joy and the blessing of living life according to Yahweh's way, then choose it. So choose this day whom you will serve, and they will be given the choice. Now in Isaiah 27, verse 6, it says, He will cause those who come of Jacob to take root, and Israel will blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. Now, to fill the world with fruit would be an impossible task right now for the tiny nation of Israel because, Israel at this time is not a blessed nation. She's plagued with wars. She's plagued with the lack of rainfall and the lack of other blessings which come only from Yahweh. But the pastor says, but rest assured, O Israel, you will have peace one day and you will have blessings. And your fruit will one day be plentiful enough to supply all the world. Now, we see, Israel is not the chosen nation. The Jews are not the chosen people and so forth. We know that according to the scriptures. They're just a tiny part of the nation of Israel, the people, the tribes of Israel at this time. But Yahweh does have his plans at this particular place, and the time will come when all of this will take place. Now in Yeshuah 36, verse 7 through 12, Yeshuah 36, verse 7 says, "Therefore, this is what Father Yahweh says. I have lifted up my hand," and of course that means vowing an oath by the name of Yahweh, who you can't vow by any other greater name, right? He says, "Surely the heathen," and of course that's unbelievers, "that surround you, they will bear their shame," because one day they will. One day those who mistreat the house of Yahweh and have hatred towards the house of Yahweh, they will bear their shame. They will realize that they were wrong. "But you, O mountains of Israel, you will shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people of Israel, for they are at hand to come." Notice, they, my people of Israel, they are at hand to come. They're not there now, okay? But the time will come when this will take place. "For behold, I am for you. I will turn to you, and you will be tilled and sown." You got to remember now, this desert areas, and there's a lot of different desert areas in the Middle East and so forth, all of that area. But all of that's going to be changed one day, as we'll see. He says, "I will multiply men upon you." And notice, all the house of Israel, all of it. "And the cities will be inhabited, and the wastes will be rebuilt." Okay? This is what we will be doing. We will be rebuilding these waste places, okay? But notice how it talks about, it says, all the earth, all the house of Israel, all of it, okay? Again, showing what the prophet Moshe said about how Yahweh has only dealt with one family, okay? The house of Israel. "And I will multiply man and beast upon you, and they will be fruitful and increase." Now that's the same blessing that Yahweh gave back in Genesis chapter 1, right? When he said, "Be fruitful and multiply to man and to beast." "I will settle you according to your former estates, and will do better for you than at your beginnings, and you will know that I am Yahweh." I will do better for you than at your beginning, and you will know that I am Yahweh. Okay? Because remember the beginning, what occurred in Genesis. Okay? Genesis showed you that it didn't take long before they went away from Yahweh. And then Genesis 49 tells you all the things that would take place in the last days. Okay? But Yahweh says, notice, you will know that I am Yahweh. Until a person has a mind open to know Yahweh, then you really never know what the blessings are all about from Yahweh. "And yes, I will cause men to walk upon you. My people Israel," notice, my people Israel, those who rule as Yahweh rules, right? "They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance, and you will never again bereave them." Okay? So notice, you will be their inheritance. Remember, these things will be given. The earth is given to the children of men. That's the promise, right? Well, those who possess this, the ones who will overcome, the family of Yahweh, they will have possession of this. And it will be their responsibility, okay, to keep all of these laws that are written in the book, okay? And remember, the things that are there, just like all of these laws that have to do with slavery, with servants and so forth, these people who survive will be our servants. And we will keep these laws towards them. And we will take care of them. And we will multiply them upon the face of this earth, allow them to do this, and that, you remember, the earth will all have to be cleansed and so forth, and that we will supply all of these things for them. We will take care of them. Well, Pastor Rice says, when visiting Israel in the spring of 1982, I noticed most of the mountains of Israel were nothing but bare wasteland. They were beautiful, cultivated fields where irrigation was incorporated, but the majority of the land of Israel is desert and barren mountain. And this will change in the future, but only through the blessings and the power of Yahweh, of course. Now, in Moshe 9, verses 11 through 15, he says, "In that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that has fallen, and repair its breaches, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will rebuild it as in the days of old." In other words, the government. Remember, King David was symbolized the government of Yahweh. He says that they may possess the remnant of Eden and all of the heathen, that is those who do not believe, who are called with my name, says Yahweh, who does this, because they will be called with the name of Yahweh. Once they see these things and they have their minds opened, then they will accept these things. Behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, that the plowman will overtake the reaper, notice, and the treader of grapes, him who sows seed. And the mountains will drop sweet wine, and all the hills will melt. Okay? So the time is going to come to where the food will be very, very plenteous. Okay? And so it will produce enough to be able to where it can go out to all the world and take care of everyone. Because remember, that valley is going to open up. Okay? And from that valley, that's where all this is going to start springing forth, because of all of the filth and radiation and so forth and the land and so forth. Yahweh's going to have to open up that valley, and when he does, then that will be where the clean earth will be, and all these things will be able to be produced. And I will bring back the captives of my people Israel, and they will rebuild the waste cities and inhabit them, and they will plant vineyards and drink wine from them, and they will also make gardens and eat the produce from them. So this shows you here how we're going to be enjoying this earth during this time. Okay? And I will plant them upon the land, and they will no more be pulled out of the land, for I have given to them, says Yahweh your Father. Okay? Now, the devastated cities are going to be rebuilt. But of course, when these cities are built, you know, I seen something on the news one time where it was like they showed this house, and it was a beautiful place, you know, nice house outside. It had, you know, a nice lawn and wildflowers growing and everything, and a big forest everywhere around it, you know, beautiful place. And then all of a sudden the camera began to back up and back up and back up and back up, and you seen the trees growing, and then all of a sudden you seen the trees grow, and then all of a sudden it spreads out far enough, and there's New York. And all the skyscrapers are right there, you know. And I thought, man, you would never know that this was right there in New York City, you know, if the camera wouldn't have spread out that way, because it was separated with just trees, forests all the way around it, you know. But yet there was a big, huge skyscrapers. But these cities are not going to be rebuilt for the garbage that they have going on them now. You know, these concrete jungles are not going to be there. You know, everything in a city is concrete. You got concrete and asphalt. You got it's everywhere. You know, steel, metal, and so forth. But these things are not going to. The cities are not going to be built this way, because for one thing, people don't have to group together to where you got 100 stories high for people to fill up a skyscraper. You're going to have all the land you got, wide open land to go out and spread out. You know, and to enjoy the earth. And the thing is, these people, you know. The earth is so corrupted now and messed up to where you don't even ground with the earth, you know, because everybody walks on concrete and everything, you know, and no one ever makes contact with the earth itself. You know, everything in the city is completely wiped out, you know. Well, of course, Yahweh's way of a city had nothing to do with this. Remember, they had walls around it and so forth. And of course, these things kept out the animals and so forth from coming into the areas and so forth. It had nothing to do with grouping together, because when mankind groups together, that's where sin begins. Okay, and that's where, if you notice, clouds form over populated areas. Why? Because of all the sin and stuff that's going up into the firmament. That's where the particles go up, and so therefore, the water particles have something to hang on to, and then they come down. But these devastated cities are going to be rebuilt, and the citizens of the new world will plant vineyards and drink wine, and drinking Yahweh's way now. Drinking Yahweh's way will be enjoyed in Yahweh's kingdom to the glory of Yahweh. No one will ever get drunk, okay? It's going to be all according to the ways of Yahweh. Yahweh's way is going to take over. Let's see something here. Judges. You remember here, one quick verse. Judges 9. Wow. 9:13. There we go. Okay. But the vine said to them, should I cease bringing forth new wine, which cheers both Yahweh and men, to go and sway over trees? Okay? So notice, the new wine cheers both Yahweh and man. Okay? So when we drink the alcohol, remember, you're going to have control over the microorganisms. Wine doesn't affect Yahweh in the same way in which Yahweh doesn't get drunk, okay? But it cheers his heart. The scriptures tells you that, and it cheers the heart of man. The only thing is right now, you don't have control over those microorganisms, okay? Because your body is full of sin. And because of that, you can't utilize alcohol in the manner in which it is. Now, they know they've done tests, and they know this alcohol is healthy, okay, and can help a person, okay? But the problem is that mankind doesn't have the mind to be able to control it, nor the body to be able to control it at this time, and so therefore it destroys the body, and it eats the body alive. It literally destroys it, okay? And this is why the great wisdom of Yahweh has told us and pleaded with us, don't drink. Just wait till Yeshua comes, okay? We can have our drink with Yeshua at the marriage supper, right? At his memorial. That'd be the time when we'll be able to have it once again. But when in the kingdom, these things, all things that Yahweh has made will be enjoyable, but it will be done according to Yahweh's way. We will actually be able to partake of food and taste food for what it's really meant to taste like, which we have no idea right now. You know, there's so much artificial garbage that's in there. You go and you buy stuff, and even the tastiest food that you can get right now, the tastiest fruit, the sweetest fruit, and so forth. It may be nice, but it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing compared to the way that Yahweh originally made it. When you take something, you stick it in your mouth, you talk about bursting with flavor. The juice is just going to be running down your face, and you're just going to you're going to enjoy it so tremendously because it's going to be made the way that Yahweh originally created it. We don't know that. We can't comprehend that right now. You know? Now everything is shot up with chemicals and everything else that they can think of to be able to try and mimic the taste of something. Well, people will plant gardens and they'll eat the produce of it. You know, even the oxygen level and stuff was totally different at that time. You know, we've polluted the atmosphere so much to where we don't even breathe in oxygen the way that we're supposed to be breathing it in. You know, and the fruits and the firmament doesn't have all the things that it originally had. You know, it's struggling hard right now to keep us alive. It's really struggling hard to keep us alive. It's doing its job because it has to do what Yahweh commanded it to do, keep the law. But it's fighting against all the sickness and disease and mutations that's in it. And that's in the land, in the air, and in the water, everywhere. You know, it's all around. But at this time, people will plant gardens and eat of the produce. And the face of the land of Israel will change drastically in the new world. Where sandy desert and barren wasteland once were, there will be flowing waters and green pastures. Isaiah 41, verses 18 through 20, it says, I will open rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of the valleys, notice. And I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land springs of water. Now, like I said, there's desert all over the place, you know, in the Middle East and so forth. Well, desert is simply to where the land was affected, improper use of the land. You know, they didn't keep the laws of Yahweh. They didn't keep the sabbatical years, so the microbes weakened in it. And they certainly didn't do what Yahweh commanded them to do. And so therefore the land weakened, the wind and the erosion and everything else takes place. And eventually it wears it down to where it became desert. And that spreads and spreads and spreads, you know. But again, by having the use and the control of the microbes, you'll be able to bring forth the desert land and actually make it fertile once again to where it will grow. And you'll see these things. The whole earth will be covered with the green vegetation and the beauty of Yahweh's way. So the wilderness will be a pool of water, and the dry land will be springs of water. And I will plant in the wilderness the cedar, the shitah tree, which that includes the mesquite tree, the acacia, the myrtle, and the olive tree. I will set in the desert, notice, the fir tree, the pine tree, and the box tree together. These are the things that's going to grow out in the desert. Right now in the desert, you don't see nothing but piles of sand, right? Or maybe you might see around, if you come around an oasis, you might see a few palm trees, But these trees, these are the fir, pine, these are evergreen trees. These evergreen trees are going to be able to grow and produce as the land becomes fertile and produces. So they may see and know, notice. So they may see, the people will see all of these things take place. They're going to see the earth begin to be reconstructed once again and brought back to its original beauty. So they may see and know and consider. They've got to consider, because remember, they're going to have to make a decision as to which way they want to go. And understand together that the hand of Yahweh has done this, and the Holy One of Israel has created it. So they're going to be taught the laws of Yahweh. They're going to be explained what took place in Genesis. They're going to see these things with their very eyes and experience the blessings of being alive at this time period and actually having the food and so forth that they will have, and experience the beauty of the earth and be taught the laws of Yahweh. And then they will have to consider and understand and make a choice. Is this what they really want, or do they want to go back into sin? So when Satan is loosed, that's going to be a time period that they're going to have to choose between. Now, Israel could have had these blessings long ago if only our forefathers had obeyed Yahweh, because these promises were made to Israel, and if they would live according to Yahweh's law, but of course they chose not to, They didn't do it. Deuteronomy 28, verses 1 through 2, it says, "And it will be, if we will listen diligently to the voice of Yahweh your Father, by observing and doing all of his laws, which I command you this day, that Yahweh your Father will set you high above all the nations on earth. And all these blessings will come upon you and accompany you, says Yahweh, because you obey Yahweh your Father." So there's the promise that's given there. And then in verse 12, "Yahweh will open heavens in the storehouse of his bountiful treasure, and send rain upon your land in its season, and to bless all the work of your hands. And you will lend to many nations, but you will borrow from none." Notice, he promises the rain, he promises the blessings of the seasons and so forth, if they would only have done this. But of course, the human race just doesn't realize the blessing that they've missed out because of their rebellious attitude. Nor does humanity realize the curses that is brought upon himself because of its refusal to live by Yahweh's laws, his statutes, his judgments, all the things that Yahweh's given us to show us how we can have abundant life and enjoy life. Well, the only reason, of course, that the sickness in this world today is because mankind has rejected the laws of health which Yahweh gave him to keep them in health, right? If you reject those laws, then you have no health. Remember what it says in Revelation 22, verse 2? It says, "The healing of the trees, the healing of the nations will come forth from the leaves of the trees." Okay? The leaves of the trees will bring forth the health of the people. Well, everything that Yahweh has created, we don't even understand everything that Yahweh has created, but everything that Yahweh has created can be beneficial. There's certain things that we have gotten completely away from. Even the mesquite tree is a wonderful tree. It's got the thorns and stuff, but the reason why trees have thorns is to keep the herbivores from coming in and eating them up. Otherwise, it would totally destroy the tree. So this is a means of defense. But the leaves can be taken. The leaves are a means by which you can mix them and so forth and use them for things, herbal treatment for headaches and things like this, and even the mesquite beans. The American Indians used to take the beans and roast them and grind them up as flour, and that's what helped them through the wintertime, be able to make it through the wintertime and so forth. So everything we have, just like with watermelon and stuff, the watermelon rind is so beneficial. Most of the time, that's just people throw all this kind of stuff away, But all of these things are beneficial. Today, of course, we have to, peel stuff and throw away stuff. But there's a lot of vitamins and things like that are actually in the peelings and stuff of certain fruits and stuff, But of course, because of pesticides and stuff, you throw this stuff away. Well, one thing never throw away, though, and that is if you ever, you peel oranges or lemons, always keep the white on there. You can take the rind off, but leave that white intact, because that's where all the bioflavonoids and stuff are, all the important things that are very healthy for you It's right there. And so Yahweh's made things that we don't even, we don't even know because we've lost that information. We've lost so much as generation after generation after generation has passed on because of man's sin. Man's sin says, forget about those things. Just replace it with something else over here. And that something else over there, of course, ends up being something that destroys the health of mankind. It's all Satan's attitude. The way she's so subtle and crafty in the way that she does things to try and destroy man and kill man. Okay, we're going to have to stop here on page 275, about the middle of the page there.